Hello, and thanks for joining me. In the next few videos, I'll be taking you on a little trip outside of Turkey, but don't worry, we're not going far. One of the exciting parts for me, at least, about living in the southwest of Turkey is that there are so many Greek islands just a stone's throw away, and one that's really nearby is the island of Rhodes. Even though Rhodes is visible from Dacia, there are no direct ferries. Instead, we made the hour drive to Marmaris and caught a morning ride out. We used the Turkish ferry line called Yeşil Marmaris and purchased tickets ahead of time, so we just needed to check in on the day of and collect the ticket. The boat was fairly empty on this morning, but it's still mid-May, so I imagine it being much busier in the coming months. And even though it was cloudy this morning, the seas were fairly calm, which I was thankful for. The trip was easy, and we arrived in just under an hour. It really does feel like a proper vacation when you need to show your passport, so after making our way through passport control, we were able to start our Greek island adventure. Rhodes is the fourth largest of the Greek islands and is the capital of the 12 islands in the south known as the Dodecanese. Two of the most popular areas in the city of Rhodes are Old Town, which is where most of the historic sites are, and then right next to it the city center, which is more modern. After dropping our bags off at our hotel, located between the city center and Old Town, we stopped by a lovely coffee shop called Monk to refuel with an espresso, and I had my first of many Freddo cappuccinos, which is my favorite treat while in Greece. By far, the most popular part of the city of Rhodes is Old Town. Rhodes was occupied by the Knights of St. John from the 1300s to the 1500s, and they transformed it into a medieval wonder that's still enjoyed today. The city is enclosed by a 4-kilometer-long wall that's unlike any fortification that I've ever seen before, and this impressive fortress is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Palace of the Grand Master is impossible to miss when in Rhodes. This castle was built in the 14th century by the Knights of St. John, and it has over 150 rooms. Of course, over the years, damage was done to the original castle by invasions, wars, and even an accidental explosion that destroyed much of the palace, so it was mostly rebuilt in the 1900s by the Italians. Throughout the castle, you can see various examples of sculptures, vases, furniture, and also many beautiful mosaics. Just outside the entrance to the Palace of the Grand Master sits the famous Street of the Knights. This medieval street is lined with inns from the 15th century where the knights used to stay, and many believe it's one of the best preserved medieval streets in Europe. The street can become quite crowded during the day with cruise ship day trippers and their big tour groups, but I found in the evening it had cleared out quite a bit, and for a brief moment I even had this street all to myself. Conveniently located just at the end of the Street of the Knights is the Church of Our Lady of the Castle. This small church is actually a Byzantine cathedral dating back to the 11th century. Today the church is well known for its display of portable icons of worship. The icons were painted on wood using color that had been diluted in a mixture of vinegar and egg yolk, and given that the majority of these are from the 14th to 18th centuries, it's actually really astounding how well these colors have held up over time. Since this was our first time in Rhodes, my husband and I weren't familiar with the area, and we honestly didn't do too much planning ahead of time, but I'm glad that we checked out the clock tower. The clock tower in Rhodes is said to be built upon the ruins of a former Byzantine tower, and it was constructed in the 7th century, but more impressive than its history were the 360-degree views that we got from the top. I'd actually recommend checking this out first if you have the chance, because I think it could really help you to get a better sense of the layout of Old Town and help you to navigate the rest of your day. Just next to the clock tower is the Suleiman Mosque. The mosque was built back in 1522 after the Ottomans' defeat of the Knights, and it was named after the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman. Its towering minaret and peachy pink color make it easy to spot from afar. Although this mosque wasn't open, it was still interesting to see, and it really drove home just how much history lies within these old city walls and the changes that have occurred throughout the centuries. The Ottoman influence is easy to see looking around in the Old Town. If you're looking for a little break from the historical sites, you can always make your way down to the waterfront. There is a wonderful walkway that wraps itself around the city center and along the border of Old Town, down to the various ports, and it's a lovely way to get the fresh sea breeze. Also located along the seafront, you'll find all of the various boat and ferry lines where you can get information about their services and buy tickets from their little booths. Also along the waterfront of the Mandraki Marina is said to be where the famous Colossus of Rhodes statue once stood. This 105-foot-tall bronze statue of the ancient sun god Helios was considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Although the statue is no longer here, people still come just to imagine where it once towered over the city. A bit outside the city center, you'll come across the Acropolis of Rhodes. The site is large and sits atop a hill overlooking the city below. I've been to quite a few ancient sites before, and this was certainly one of the more sparse ones, but it is free to enter. And although there wasn't a great deal of information provided on site, from what I could find, the Acropolis dates back to the 5th century BC. Centuries of earthquakes, as well as damage from wars as recently as World War II, really did a number on the ruins here, so there's not much left standing. Although there might not be much to see, I still find these ancient sites to be quite important, and you can't go wrong with the great views that you get from atop this hill. Although the Acropolis was lacking the ancient treasures we were looking for, the Archaeological Museum in Old Town made up for it and then some. The museum is located on the former grounds of the Hospital of the Knights of St. John, and it dates back to the 15th century. Here you can see all sorts of ancient treasures on display from not only Rhodes but also other Greek islands. And the museum is deceivingly small looking from the outside, but I was really impressed by the number of pieces on display, their overall condition, and the peaceful courtyards located throughout the grounds. I didn't know this before coming, but Rhodes is a really popular cruise ship port, and during the daytime the streets of Old Town can become quite crowded, and I imagine as summer comes it's only going to get worse. I think the trick is to explore the streets during early morning or in the evening after the day trippers have left, and then it will be a bit calmer. The streets are lined with tourist shops selling the usual type of souvenirs, but you do find the occasional gem. There are no shortage of restaurants either in this area. Fish and calamari, of course, were popular items on the menu, and I'd say that dining prices were about average compared to what you'd pay in other popular European tourist destinations, but that's not to say that it's a good deal, as many are overpriced simply for their location. Within the back alleys of Old Town in the Jewish Quarter, you'll find the Kahal Shalom Synagogue. Normally, in addition to the synagogue, there's also a museum, but it was temporarily closed for renovations. Built in 1577, the synagogue was to accommodate the island's Jewish population that dates back to the 1st century AD. The population started shrinking in the early 1900s, around the time of the Italian occupation, and eventually by 1944, under Nazi Germany control, the island's Jewish population of less than 2,000 were all deported to the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camps, where only 150 survived by the end of the war. Although small, the synagogue featured a lot of intricate artistic details that I found interesting to see, and I appreciated the flooring dating back several hundred years, which is consistent with a lot of floors that you'll see throughout Rhodes. If you have the time, I'd also recommend taking a walk along the ramparts that surround the city. The starting point is located next to the entrance to the Palace of the Grand Master, which is also where you buy your ticket. When we visited the ramparts, they were only open Monday through Friday from noon to 3, so you'd have to time it just right. But this walk onto the fortress walls will take you roughly halfway around the walled-in city, and it helps to give you a much better idea of just how robust these fortress walls are, and the views of the city are certainly worth it. You'll exit the ramparts on the opposite side of where you entered, which allows you to explore a bit more of the alleyways that make this medieval city so charming. Just being able to quietly walk up and down these cobblestone streets was a real joy, and was probably my favorite part of Old Town. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this little video. I really appreciate it. I have more to come in my future videos where we'll explore more of Rhodes as well as the island of Simi, so if you'd like to stay up to date, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and giving this video a thumbs up. Until next time, thanks!